Hey everyone, welcome to Group Text. Okay, I love when I get to interview someone whose credits absolutely read like my streaming queue. Chelsea Devantez is, get ready. You ready for this? You want to feel really good about yourself? Okay, hang on, here we go. An Emmy-nominated writer, a filmmaker, a comedian, the host of the podcast Glamorous Trash, which centers around different celebrity memoirs, the head writer of The Problem with Jon Stewart on Apple TV, the showrunner and producer of Not Dead Yet on ABC, and the co-producer of Girls 5 Ava, which has found a new home and third season on Netflix. Somehow Chelsea's also found time to write a wonderful new memoir called I Shouldn't Be Telling You This, which comes out June 4th. The book is a very honest recounting of some pretty dark times in her life, along with bright moments and also a few revelations along the way. Oh, and I forgot the part. It's really, really funny. Let's get into it. Chelsea, welcome to Group Text.
Thank you so much. I love the name of your podcast because my group text is everything to me. It literally has a chapter in my book. And I would have to say, I was not the showrunner of Not Dead Yet. I was just a co-EP. So I gotta give all credit to Casey and David.
Yeah, but still, I was only co-EP.
Yeah, I was only, right? No, thank you so much for reading my credits.
Doesn't it make you feel good about you? Doesn't it make you feel so good about yourself? Everyone's always like, when you read like what I've actually done, you're like,
yes,
well, I've accomplished something.
Yeah, you're like, wait, this morning I was sure I was a piece of shit, but right now I'm like, maybe things are okay. I just heard my credits back. Feels very different to hear it than to live it, as I'm sure you know.
Yes, and I wake up every morning, or I say a good 5 out of 7 mornings a week going, but see, do you add, okay, here we go, motherfucking loser piece of shit?
No, but what a beautiful icing on your shit cake to start your day with. No, I add all the things in my brain from therapy. So I'm like, I'm a piece of shit. No, I love myself. I'm amazing. All these lies, I don't do affirmation. I do morning lies.
I like that.
That everything's wonderful and good.
By the way, that's usually what I say though on the tennis court. When I miss something, I'm like, you goddamn motherfucking piece of shit. How'd you miss that? But I've gotten better now. I just start my day with what my mother used to say. What fresh hell is this?
Wow. Every day. Wow. What a life. You've lived such a life. And to start with saying what fresh hell is this? Accurate, I would say. Accurate.
Yes. It's quite the legacy. Okay. I have a lot of questions about the book, but first, some people, we're going to fill them in, might not be familiar with who you are. You moved around a lot when you were a kid. You also changed your last name a few times. So when someone asks, who are you and where are you from? Yes. What do you say?
I usually pivot immediately to a joke. When you've had a really traumatized childhood, all small talk questions are like landmines, Mm-hmm. And I had such a life that I always wanted to be normal, and I definitely was not normal. And so I would always pivot to like, cute chunky necklace. Where'd you get that? And just shift it. And now I'm very proud of who I am. And I love, I'm not gonna say love, but yeah, I grew up in 6 different states all across the Southwest. People ask me if, I was a military brat, but no, just a lot of divorces. My mom divorced, we had some fresh starts, and I call New Mexico home now. And yeah, so now we're fine, but small talk used to be just a nightmare, a small nightmare.
A friend of mine whose parents were married and divorced multiple times and kids from all different marriages used to say, I don't have a family tree, I have a family bush.
I love that. And I would say I have a family burn pile. What's a family trash that could maybe be recycled, or it's burning in the yard. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. But you've had a very unconventional life, starting with you found out your father was an anonymous sperm donor. And first of all, how old were you when you found out? And second of all, what do you say on Father's Day? Do you send a card? Is there like a happy sperm donor day?
There is not. Every day is a sad sperm donor day. No. So I was 14 when I found out. And on Father's Day, actually, my favorite bit, I've been doing it for maybe almost 10 years now, is I take the just the most naked, sexiest photo I could ever take of myself. I post it on Instagram and I say, Happy Father's Day to whoever the fuck made this. Thank you for these blessings. And I send it up, and no, I do not, I don't partake in the holiday. It's a me day. It's a me day.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's a me day. As a kid, did you always want to be a writer? Was there like a teacher that sort of lit that fire inside of you? Because I remember the teacher that tried to stamp it out of me, Mr. Gilman.
Thank you, full name, yes. Add his
Mr.
address
Gilman.
if you have it.
It's 7th grade, Marlborough School.
What did he say?
He said I'd written an essay and it was like you had to describe snow. And I said it was like, obviously I wrote it when I was hungry. It was like walking on extra crispy chicken from KFC. And he was like, that doesn't work. That's not a good example. That's blah, blah, blah. And you want to say, this is supposed to be a creative writing class. And for a 7th grader, that was pretty good.
That's hilarious. That's much better than like the dewy, crisp, moist, special snowflakes underneath my feet. Yeah, no, that's teachers, man, they can be so good, or they can really mess you up for a lifetime. And no, I did not know I wanted to be a writer. I was raised in really small towns and we didn't have TV all the time. And so I had a really small, narrow worldview. So I thought the options, if you were a funny lady, were Julia Roberts and Sandra Bullock. And I was like, so you got to just be in movies and that's it. And I really didn't realize the world happening behind them, the writing, the directing, the whatever. So it took me a long time to find out that was an option. And I would shout out my theater teacher, Tim Crofton, who wrote in my recommendation letter for college, she doesn't know it yet, but she's actually a director. And when I read it, I said, he thinks I'm a bad actress. I didn't even see the wisdom in it. And I didn't really realize I was a writer until I started performing at the Second City, where you write and perform, all your own stuff. And that's when it really clicked for me. Yeah.
So which takes me back to, how'd you end up in the entertainment business? Obviously, we just answered that because you wanted to be an actress. Second City, especially Chicago, is a huge, huge deal. People always hear us all talk about this one and that one, and my mom was there, and this and that and the other. How did you get to Second City? Coming from, it could not have been it doesn't sound like your life was a straight line.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great point. My life was like a weird little twisted knot of a necklace. I went from New Mexico to New York City.
Well, that's college. A jump.
A real jump. I was the first person in my family to ever go to college, but I went to acting school, so it was a wash. What a waste.
Where'd you go?
I went to Tisch School of the Arts at NYU. And
NYU.
I do want to make a PSA, though, that I really thought I had to go to like a big fancy art school and take out thousands of dollars of loans that would ruin my life. And as you know, you don't have to do that. There are people who have jobs in the entertainment business and they didn't do that school. I wish I hadn't, because when I was there, I found comedy, and I found a comedy studies course being taught in Chicago by Ann Libra, and I could get study abroad credit for it. So I went to Chicago. I realized, I've been in the wrong goddamn city the whole time. And I rented out a $300 room in Chicago, moved there immediately, began taking classes. And then I spent 7 years at the Second City. I did a cruise ship for them. I was on their touring company in a van. And then finally I did 3 of their main stage shows. So I spent like 7 or 8 years there becoming a comedian.
Okay. First of all, I love the fact that New York thinks Chicago is a foreign country, but that's that's a different conversation. I got to ask, cruise ship. Okay. Now we're going off the rails.
Please,
here. Okay.
Please.
I'm addicted to below deck, which I know is like private yachting.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of addicted to these people who are doing these round the world cruises.
Yeah.
Where like you go for a year. What is life like for a performer on a cruise ship? Because you're not allowed to be in like the good areas.
So actually, cruise ships they kind of have their own caste system. It's very messed up. But being an American performer, we were encouraged to be in the regular areas if you looked nice. And as a comedian, that's like what? Not a lot of the time. So sometimes you'd get kicked out of the nice areas. And basically, we wouldn't perform our first show till Wednesday. So you had 3 days a week where you were anonymous. And then the 3 days after that, I played the blow up doll in a sketch. So I would become blow up doll girl. The cruise ship is the most amazing thing. I would never, ever, ever do again. Seeing how it works underneath the boat, I will never walk onto a cruise ship. I will say for the crew, the best thing is that maritime law rules. Maritime law means there's no laws. And tax-wise, beers are 25 cents. A bottle of wine is $1. Cigarettes are 25 cents. So, I mean, I was just made of wine for 4 months. And every day they would play the same things on loop each week. It was the Jonestown Massacre documentary and How to Catch a Predator.
Nice.
Because apparently those were their two most popular shows. So we would watch those shows, we would do comedy, we would be so hopped up on wine. And then you'd like go down to the crew quarters where you're like, people are like giving each other like haircuts with scissors and like blow drying ramen to make it hot. And yeah, it was just wild.
Okay, you've taken us again a completely different direction. So I'm going to jump all around. Let's talk about the podcast because you just brought up serial killers and Jonestown. And I'm a huge true crime fan. Please tell me you're also a true crime fan.
I'm not at all. I'm too much of a sensitive little baby, which is why I do my podcast, because I want the gripping stories, but I can't have it end in murder.
Oh, God, I thought we were going to be best friends.
I know,
okay.
I'm so sorry.
It is. So, Glamorous Trash. All you do is talk about celebrity memoirs.
We read and recap and book club a celebrity memoir. It's almost always with another woman in the entertainment business. So it's like a little bit of an inside perspective because, I have another guest. We go through it. I really approach it in I hope, a very thoughtful way, in a very empathetic way. I loved these books as a kid. Celebrity memoirs have always been my favorite book genre. I say that is what happens when your nearest bookstore growing up is a Walmart. It's the books they had. But then some of them really changed my life, like Delta Burke's and Jane Fonda's. And so I come to this genre just adoring it. Now, we both know some of them very bad. When we read a bad book, I hate it. We talk about it. We make fun of it. But I'm always hoping for the books to be good because I feel like they've been branded as trash when really they are women's stories that have been hidden and shunned and have been offering these gems for so long. That's how I feel about it. But you tell me, because I know you might have a different perspective entirely.
I love a good one, but I really enjoy the trash. Yeah. To me, Kitty Kelly should be a saint.
That's amazing. I love that. Yes, that is why my podcast is called Glamorous Trash, because when the trash is fun. And also, I don't like memoirs that are like so heady and poetic and I'm an author. No. Be trashy or I'm not going to enjoy it. I need to do my learning via trash. I can't do my learning via like Proust or something.
I love all the ones with the great old movie stars, especially the British men and their raconteurs and they're sleeping with everyone. I love those. What makes a good celebrity memoir?
One that does not tell me what your grandparents did for a living for 9 pages when the book begins. I don't care. Don't ever take me back to your grandparents unless it matters to the story, right?
No, I get interested when we find out who you slept with to get your break, who you had to sleep with to keep your career, and who you had to sleep with to get a comeback.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a firm, actually, you know what? My AC went off. Let me turn it off.
Okay.
Don't want that messing up your audio. Okay. I am a firm believer that if you are not ready to memoir, don't memoir. Do not come to a memoir being like, I'll tell a little bit of it, or I'm not ready, or I haven't processed it, or I haven't visited a therapist. Like, memoir when it's time, and then draw blood. This is your time to shine and tell everything. I love when people pass on the message they really need to pass on. Like Rue McClanahan's memoir was also life-changing. It has the best title. It's My First 5 Husbands and the Ones Who Got Away. So good. And one of the biggest messages of the book is to not be a people pleaser and just say yes right away. And to just say, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. Because she gets into all these marriages by being like, no, sure. And so it's so fun. I'm learning about her marriages. I'm getting some Golden Girls goss, but then I'm also walking away. And really, when I went to buy a wedding dress and, they pressure you so much, I was standing there. They're like, buy this wedding dress. And I said, let me think about it. And that's from reading Rue McClanahan's book. And but it didn't take. I did buy that wedding dress and then I did return it the next day. But I almost had growth.
You know what? I appreciate that you went home and tried it on in your own environment. And you went, not for me. I just did that with another thing the other day.
Yeah.
Okay. Clearly you pivot towards autobiography rather than biography.
Beyond. I don't even know if I believe in biographies. I believe in them, but it's like a textbook for me. I don't want someone else to tell me how your life went. I want you to tell me how your life went. I want an actress who has never had to form a sentence in their life to write a sentence about it. Like, that's
you're acting like they write it.
Well, some of them are like, and here's my PSA: get a ghostwriter. It doesn't make you less. It helps you. There's so many good ones, but there's a few of them that are like, I'm writing this by myself, and then you're like, oh my God, you really did. Like Jane Fonda really did write the damn thing. It's why it's 600 pages long. Barbara Streisand, I think she did like voice note. I think she just talked and then she said, don't change a goddamn word.
Probably. But by the time she talked and turned it in, she had gone over it 17 times because she's also that kind of a perfectionist.
Yes, but I think if you really are editing your memoir, it shouldn't be 1,200 pages. No, it was 1,000. It was 1,000 pages.
So, but let's talk about the book. Most writers dream of penning the great American novel. That's their dream. But you decided to become a Hollywood writer.
That's right. Woo! That's right.
Have you asked your therapist about this decision? And I, by the way, and you're talking to someone who has managed to never be highbrow. And yet I realize that what I have done with my life is more lowbrow in the most positive way. And yet I find a way to keep challenging what the lowbrow is. Because I can just lean into what I like.
Absolutely. That's why I was so excited to talk to you too. Like, you really are what I love, which is glamorous trash. It's like, we are the high, we are the low. And I never dreamed of writing like a Jon Steinbeck book. Like, I loved it and I read it, but I never wanted to do that. I wanted to make entertainment. And, unfortunately, my therapist couldn't weigh in on that decision because I never had health insurance until my first job working with Jon Stewart. And then I got a therapist, and at that point we were too far in. There was no turn. There was no other. It's so funny, as the book is coming out, I've never looked up how to be a dentist more. Is this where I get off the train? But
do you ever look at those commercials and go like, DeVry, I could get another degree in something and have a backup job?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And I've been looking up like how to take care of dogs for a living. Take care of lots of dogs a job. And you really do have to start an organization. And then, it always comes back to like, Chelsea, just publish the book and go back to your TV writing job. But yeah.
So how did you end up being a TV writer? I mean, obviously we know that you write your own material at Second City and you survive. Anyone great in your troupe?
Yes, actually I was Cecily Strong's understudy. It was Adie Bryant's understudy. Amber Ruffin, I used to watch her on stage all the time. Now I get to call her a dear friend. So many incredible people came through like right above me. And it was the best place to learn. It was the best place to be in my 20s. And I became a TV writer because after you do your third show at the Second City, they treat you like you're a ballerina dancer who's turning 25. Like, they're about to throw you out to pasture. And I knew like, time's up for me pretty soon. This is my third show. And the story is in the book, but I had this writing partner and we sold a show together, and something that like you will not believe happens to our friendship and to the show, and it goes away, and I have no writing samples left, but I know I'm going to need a job in 3 months. And so I start putting in a packet for every late night show I come across. And this odd packet comes through, and I recognized Busboy Productions as Jon Stewart's production company. And I put this packet in, and I get a call, and they say, Jon Stewart wants to meet you. He read your packet himself. And I was like, what? You know, in your head, you know, no one's ever reading your stuff. You know, I'm still in Chicago. I make $100 a night and I get a discount on chicken fingers. Like you're never ready for it. And he was like, you need to move here. Like, not him, I will say, my terrible manager was like, you need to move immediately. So I'm like getting out of a show. I'm deciding if my terrible boyfriend should come with me. He did. I moved to New York City and I get the address of where it is, and it's in New Jersey. But I've moved to New York City. And you think like, oh, that's not too far away. It was a train to Penn Station, a ferry, and then an Uber to get there. And yeah, I know you're.
What studio was it? Because when you say New Jersey, I'm thinking, you know, right over the bridge.
No, the story's in the book, but it was his animal sanctuary. And the show was just getting started. So we were working out of the dining room of the animal sanctuary he runs. And so that is my first break into television. And yeah, and then it went from there.
That's crazy. So then you transitioned. So what brought you to LA?
So I always wanted to write women's stories that were like nuanced and complicated and very, very funny. And here I was on my like second late night show writing about Harvey Weinstein. And
which is your second one?
The Opposition on Comedy Central with Jordan Klepper. Mm-hmm. And I call my agents and I'm like, you know, I had a dream to be doing something that it's actually not this. And they're like, the dumbest thing you could ever do is walk away from a TV job that is paying you. So stay put and we'll find you another job. And they called me a month later and they're like, are you still feeling like leaving? I said, I live in LA now. I quit a month ago, like I told you I was going to. and I'm here now. And I made a new short film and here's 2 samples, like, please send it out. And so, yeah, so I arrived in LA. I said I would never write in late night again. Then I needed rent money, immediately wrote on The Gong Show with Mike Myers.
I remember when they tried to reboot that.
Yeah. And so the actual writing packet went out saying, we need a girl, because everyone who worked on the show was a man. So I was the only woman among all the dudes. And I came in and wrote on that show and it was great because I needed money. And then finally I got to write in narrative. And that's how I ended up on shows like Bless This Mess for 2 seasons with Liz Merriweather, and then Girls Five Eva, which was, Tina Fey and Meredith Scardino's show. And then finally got to start like writing and pitching my own.
And what was your first sale?
My first sale was called This Is Our Year, which is also a story in my book. And it's because my mom used to give me these cards being like, I know everything's been really hard, but like, this is our year. And the crazy thing is that I have 12 of those. So it really was not our year for a long time. I have 12 cards and and until it finally became our year. And so I sold that show. That was my very first sale. And then I went back to become Jon Stewart's head writer, and then came back to 20th for the deal. And then I sold a few shows I was very excited about. And then the strike happened.
Yep.
And then those shows went away, and now I'm starting again and doing a feature film, and you know, the nightmare of Hollywood.
100%. The book is fascinating because you approach it in a very unique way. You start off with your harshest story.
Yeah.
And promise your readers it's going to get better. Why did you structure it that way?
So when I sold the book, the whole reason I wanted to write a memoir was because I lived through this relationship when I was very young. And it turned into domestic violence. And it ended when he did 3 drive-by shootings of my house.
Oh, Jesus. I thought mine was bad.
I mean, they're all bad. They're all bad. And as you know, the shootings, that was kind of how it ended, but that's not, so much happened. And I really wanted to tell this story because these stories are always relegated to true crime and Lifetime movies. And it kind of puts them in the shadows. So you only talk about it in these hushed tones. But really the only way to help other people from not getting into these relationships or being a participant on either side of them is if there's versions of it in culture that you can see and talk about and relate to. So I've always wanted to do it comedically, which I know sounds wild, but that's,
no, it sounds.
It's like, it's easier. It's a hard topic to talk about. Let's talk about it in the ways that we can. And I turned in the draft, and the very first chapter was that story, because it is, it really is it explains everything about me. And the last chapter in the book was what happened when the case opened up 10 years later. And I was told I had to delete all of it because it was too dangerous to share it. And I really fought against it. It was really heartbreaking. And they said, delete it or no book. And I said, fine, cancel the book. And then I came up with the idea to black out just enough words that they would still let me print it. And I decided that if I couldn't tell my story, I wanted to tell a new story with these redactions of how the system silences victims and doesn't even let us share these stories. And I had to do a bunch of rewriting, but that's why it starts and ends that way, because I wanted readers to know that something had been taken from me and that something was there. And perhaps if I had known that was going to happen, and I could have, and I wasn't allowed to tell that story, I probably would have never pitched a memoir. Like I said, only memoir when you're ready to memoir. And I would have written, Are You There, God? It's Me, Vodka, by a Chelsea you've never heard of. Like, I would have written just a different, funny book. I wouldn't have written this one. And so that's why the structure's like that.
See, and here's the difference. I think to myself, first of all, it's a great idea, especially if you're pissed off at your editor and don't want to actually take the pieces out of the book. But here's how it twisted. I'm like, that's a hilarious sight gag put into a book, leave the redacted.
Oh yeah. And people definitely, it takes them a while to realize like I'm not doing a bit, because I am a comedian.
Yeah.
It is a funny book. My editor really did. She was on my side. It was other forces. It was like, but yeah, I use it sometimes to create jokes. I use it sometimes because I really did have words there.
Yeah.
And I'm taking them out, and yeah, it's a very, I am aware now it is like it's like a big fuck you on page 2 to our systems that do not let domestic violence victims speak out.
And just to be shallow, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, it's very like Taylor Swift and the specifically capitalized letters. It's very Taylor Swift.
Well, I wish it was like that. I mean, hers is legible. Hers has a full word in there.
Yeah.
It's just like a black bar.
Look how trendy you are. All the Swifties are going to come a-running. You're very open about domestic violence. And unfortunately, I have the same history. What was going on in your life in this particular time that you let it be okay? Like, I know for me, one was physical, one was mental and emotional. They both started after very traumatic losses for me. Yeah. And with the first one, which was the physical one with my dad, had just committed suicide. And I think in a weird way, it was A, that I couldn't save him and I can save someone else. Yeah. And B, a physical manifestation of the pain. And with the relationship I got into right after my mom, which became very emotionally and mentally horrible, and lots of gaslighting and things like that. Again, it was very soon after my mom died. I thought this person was going to help fix me, and I was so broken. Yeah. But I just thought about that the other day, that it really, both for me, are very traceable to traumatic losses.
Yeah.
What was going on in your life? I know I didn't sleep well last night, but I did think of that.
And probably many nights. So thank you for also being so open about it. I really think it's what makes all the difference.
Yeah. So, well, sometimes the gummy helps, but that's neither here nor there. What was going on in your life that you found yourself in this situation and then stayed in it?
I was very young, very, very young. And I'm not sure. I don't know if I can draw a straight line. Obviously, I did have some terrible father figures. And statistically, if you grow up in a home that has domestic violence in it, you are way more likely to get into one of those relationships yourself. And listen, I'm a rule follower. I'm a brown noser. I was like, oh, this is what statistics do. You got it. I'm not sure, but I do know that looking back on it, domestic violence, we always conjure it in our minds as like dark and scary and intense and a vicious soundtrack. But abuse occurs in the mundane. You're watching a movie, you're hanging out with friends, you're having a good life. Does my butt look big? Is it cute? Is it whatever? Alongside of a temper of violence, of saying something horrible. And it all kind of intermeshes so that I think the part of my brain that would have seen a red flag, that was already manipulated out in the early stages of the relationship. So I was not seeing them as red flags. It seemed normal. It seems like life. And it seemed embarrassing. I was humiliated. And I just wanted to make it better. I wanted to talk him down. I wanted to get through it. I didn't want other people to know. I didn't want to make a big deal. I didn't want to be the girl that was worth treating like that. So I didn't want to tell anyone. And that kept me in it for a long time until finally I couldn't hide it from people anymore because there was shattered glass all over the house.
It's fascinating because I'm thinking about, for me with the emotional stuff, it's very much the same. I used to get in the car and be like, did I do okay? Did I embarrass you? Did I do anything wrong? Did they hate me?
Yeah.
And again, I look back and I saw a ton of red flags and I never should have stayed in it for as long as I did. And then it's interesting. It's like one day you just say enough.
Yeah.
Or you don't. But like for me, I was lucky enough to say one day there were circumstances that led up to, I'm like, I'm done. But also I think I had done a lot of healing.
Yes. And I think having a way out, knowing that there can be a way out is really important. Like if you were, I ran away, fled from my community. If you're going to stay in that community, sometimes it feels like you can't break up with this person who maybe everyone loves or who they're going to ruin everything and people that if you do break up with it, you feel like you can't. So I also think part of saying enough is either, having the resources to throw your life away as you know it and go start over, or having the strength to endure what in your head is maybe going to be embarrassing, but actually when you look back, I'm sure you do this too. It's like, I wish I'd never spent a second in that relationship. But when you're in it, you're thinking like, I can make this work. So
I want to reiterate that the book is very funny, but obviously there's a lot that I related to. It's a cautionary tale about the entertainment business, especially when it comes to friendship. You write about a woman named Rebecca, whom you considered your best friend. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What happened? Because you write about the relationship as being like a marriage that was destined to fail, which also I love the fact that you had gone to a psychic who said it was going to happen. So clearly your gut was right.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I had gone to the psychic who was like, this is never going to work. You're in a bad partnership. I love female friendship. It is everything to me. When my mom got out of her second abusive marriage, she did it because she and her best friend divorced their second alcoholic husbands at the same time and agreed to meet up in a small town together and start over because 2 women's salaries equal 1 man's in the 90s. And so they formed a 2-parent household. And I saw that and I said, like, that is strength. Like, to make it through anything, all you need is a best friend who is just down to fuck some shit up with you. And I found that in my best friend, Rebecca, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was just so codependent because I just loved that friendship. I knew men could hurt you, but I was like, but a female friend, it's like, you don't share finances, you're not intimate. Like, there's nothing that would stop that relationship from working. And so it was so devastating to me when she walked out of this show we had sold. And that was sort of the final thing, of this really codependent best friendship. But I couldn't forgive her after that. And so the friendship went away. And I've never been more depressed in my life. There's nothing like a female friendship breakup. It is just so different than anything romantic in your life. I think it hurts more.
Do you think it's really more unique to younger women? I don't think men necessarily get the same kind of backstabbing, which makes it such a different experience when you try to talk to a boyfriend or a husband about these things.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily understand why it's so different, woman on woman crime.
Yes. Well, and I think that's also because the love, and I mean, if we're going to judge it as backstabbing, I'll also judge the love as better love, the intimacy, the closeness, the support, the help. That's why the negative qualities hurt more. There's this old saying that, men fight with swords and women fight with 1,000 paper cuts. Mm-hmm. And so that I think also creates more pain, these tiny little cuts over time. And I do think it's interesting. I do know that, like, as time progresses, we have learned to stop telling women there can only be one and that every woman around you is your enemy and your competition, because there used to only be one woman who could be on the improv team.
Right.
I mean, really, when I got to Chicago, there's one lady. And so when I show up to class, I go, everyone around me is an enemy because there can only be one. And by the time I left Chicago, the improv teams were half women,
Right.
And so I think there's so much, it is like maybe easier for younger women to like really enmesh more, basically just because of how society is changing. But I think throughout history, there's been like really deep female friendships that people don't understand, like Oprah and Gail.
I love that. But unfortunately, we live in the entertainment business. We live in a world where really there can only be one. How do you justify that now? And I'm not talking behind the scenes. I'm talking about you're not going to have, even on an all-woman driven show, you're not going to have an all-woman writer's room, and there always is the pecking order. There can only be one HBIC.
I'm gonna say I do think it's changed. I mean, on even by the time I got to The Opposition, which is a late night comedy writers room, it was half women, half men. Now I do think it was one of the very first shows in history to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it was a lot happening, but on the last show I was on, Not Dead Yet, the room was majority women. And it's not like this is a woman room. It just was what it was. It's just who got the job. And there were lots of great, wonderful men on the show too. And it was really led with like, I don't know, like, let's just do a good job and go home and have lives. And I know for a lot of TV writing history, it has not been like that. I've also been in those rooms where it's like, there is a HBIC and you need to get in line or shit's going to get fucked up for you. I've been in some really toxic rooms, but I think there are some that are not toxic, and that's a tiny step forward. I don't know. Do you think we've made any progress at all?
I do, but also, Mariah, I have a whole other part of my life that's in front of the camera, and that's a whole different beast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then you get into all the age stuff, and, we're looking for someone like you, but not you.
Right.
You can hire me. No. We want the old version, whatever it is.
Yeah. And definitely with like looks and ageism and all this stuff on women is just 1,000 times worse still than with men. And I even think about like, it's like, yeah, we've let men, like they get old and we're like, oh, you're more handsome. What?
Yeah.
Like it's so.
Brad, George.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I am still an actor. However, having been behind the scenes so much, and I'm sure you feel this way too, it's like to witness some of the things that have been said are so horrifying. And even now, I really
better.
But wow, if that's true, fucking yikes. I'm sorry I'm swearing so much on your podcast.
No, excuse me. I started by saying, the lovely morning mantra.
Okay, good. Yeah, I even have I have a couple scripts, and I really only write stuff with multiple female leading roles, just because that's who's always been the leading roles in my life. And casting it, you'll just hear the craziest things when you go to do that. And I would say a casting conversation is the closest that has made me want to leave this business more than anything I've ever experienced.
Yeah. For people who don't know, the casting process can be brutal behind the scenes because you've got the casting agent, the writers, the producers, the network, and they will pick someone apart to the point if you ever heard it, you wouldn't leave your house again.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I'm going to say like very not smart people have made it very far. And so I could definitely participate in a conversation where we are truly talking about someone and if they are right for a role. But the things that are said are you're sort of like, I think you shouldn't be allowed to drive with that brain. Like you need to, like, we got to take your voting rights away. This is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard a human being say. And you have lots of money and power.
Yeah. I mean, it was always like, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too thin, you're too fat, you're too young, you're too old, you're too blonde, you're too dark. Your right foot is too big compared to your left foot. I mean, it's so much of it is so random.
Or even like, I mean, truly someone the other day said to me, well, we don't want to cast them because they're a Nepo baby. And I was like, then you'd be the first person in the history of Hollywood. And they were blocking this really talented one. Listen, I'm not a Nepo kid. Like I was like, this person's extremely talented. And just now you've decided to stop doing this when you've built Hollywood on it. Like it was the weirdest thing I'd ever heard. You know what I mean? Because you're like, you've told us the rules of Hollywood, and now you're also gonna change them based on like, I don't know, some whim you've had.
Right. See, for me, I always say, because obviously I have a very interesting perspective on this.
Yeah, of course.
It'll get you in the room. It might even get you an early job, but it's not going to let you keep the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is so true. And I think that is why there's like it's so interesting, because it's like, if I were to have a kid, they'll be a Nepo baby, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, God damn, you know what I mean? It's so interesting, the guardrails we've put up on who's allowed to do what and why.
Yeah. But I'm always like, it won't keep you the job.
No.
You know, at one point at one point you've proven yourself, and it needs to stop. And I look at my poor son, I'm like, oh dear, he's a third generation Nepo baby.
Right.
He's going into the music business, so that's fine. Okay. This is going to be a super deep and personal one. What's going on in your life now that's fun that you want to share with us?
Whew, you got me. What is going on in my life right now? Well, I have lost my mind because I've gotten really into thrifting. So clearly my brain is like looking for things to do. I found that chair for $50 behind me. She's pretty
that's
cute.
Very nice.
She's pretty cute.
Yeah.
And you know, I have a dog, a needy quarantine dog, because I got him quarantined. He's just so needy. And I'm putting together this book tour that's taking up all my time. And I'm like teaching a writing workshop, and we're still recording the podcast stuff. So it's just been a lot of that. And the book comes out in 5 days. So that's kind of the theme of my days right now.
You mentioned a wedding dress.
Yes, I got married. It'll be 2 years in October. And our dress code at the wedding was try and outdo us. And my husband and I are both pretty wild people, so people knew we meant it. And it was incredible. Getting married ruined my personality because I love my wedding. I'm ready to give out wedding advice. I wish we could go back and relive it. And marriage has been so wonderful. And I'm like, that's a shocker. As a child, I would tell myself, I'll never get married. I'll never get married. I'll never get married. Like, men and husbands ruin everything. And here I am thrifting a fucking couch with him, you know? And it's been wonderful.
I'm so glad to hear that. Okay, the book, I shouldn't be telling you this, comes out June 4th. This has been so fun. Even though you're not a true crime fan, I think you're fantastic. I would say we could be friends, but it's the true crime thing, and but whatever. But maybe we can get past that.
I understand, and you know what? I'll put a toe in, and if there's a murder I can really dig my heels into, I'll text you. I'll hit up the group text.
You know what? I think that's, again, something we can work through.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has been an honor talking to you.